What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Not So Stupid Podcast. Today's podcast is going to be a little different. We're going to be working on the mind space and how we view things and the perspective we approach things, because the human brain is a really amazing tool. It's a really amazing piece of technology, biological technology, that helps us process so much information all the time. But it is subject to its own limitations, and these limitations are more commonly referred to as cognitive biases. And cognitive biases are just errors in thinking that occur when processing and interpreting information in the world. And these can come about from a number of reasons. So, one way that a cognitive bias can occur is in relation to memory. We like to think that we have really awesome memory and that we vividly see what happened as a play-by-play event, but really our memory isn't as reliable as we think it is. And this can lead us to biased thinking and influence our decision making going forward. And that could hurt us in a lot of ways and help us in other ways as well, of course. But understanding that there is this flaw in memory, there is this flaw in thinking, is valuable in helping us make more informed decisions and not be as emotionally connected to these decisions that could lead us to continue to harm ourselves. And another way that cognitive biases might come up is through problems with attention. So attention is a really limited resource. We always like to say we pay attention to things because it's a currency. If you are not using that currency wisely, you're not gonna get good return out of it a lot of the time. So when we are attentive, we like to be selective with our attention, and that selectiveness doesn't always paint the full picture for us and gives us a limited exposure to what's actually happening to us or what we're actually doing to something else, to ourselves, to the world, to other people, whatever the case may be. So all of these subtle little biases can creep in and influence us, the way we think and the way we view the world. And this will ultimately as well lead us to this will ultimately influence our decision making as well, which, if we're not careful, can lead us to decisions that aren't indicative of what we want to accomplish, aren't indicative of what's actually happening in the world, and just feeding into this false perspective that, again, if we're not aware of, can steer us further and further away from what we want to accomplish, the people we want to become, and what the world is trying to show us. So we're going to break down 5 of the most common cognitive biases that most people experience. And just having the awareness of these biases is really powerful, because when you're aware of them, you're going to recognize them in your day-to-day life, you're going to recognize them in your thought patterns, and you'll be able to adjust your thinking and perspective to be more honest with yourself and more beneficial to yourself with your future decision making. Now, I do want to say before I go into these is I'm going to use examples with a lot of these, and some of these examples might hit home with you and you might feel a certain type of way about it. You might want to brush it off. You might feel uncomfortable that I'm bringing it up, because it is such a relatable thing to you. But I want you to kind of embrace that idea despite the fact, because that discomfort, there's some truth there. There's a reason you're uncomfortable. It's 9 out of 10 times going to be because you don't like that idea and you don't like that you're exhibiting that idea. So you want to avoid pursuing it further because you don't want to believe that that's you. But again, encourage you to listen through the entire thing, understand what is happening, why it's happening, and how you can become a better person for it in the long run, because you avoiding it and not sitting with that discomfort for a small period of time will lead you to continue to essentially lie to yourself that you aren't doing this thing, and let you continue that cycle of repeating this bias over and over and over again. So without further ado, let's get into the top 5 biases that I say. I'm going to use fitness and nutrition as the main example, but this can affect a lot of different places in your life as well. So it's not limited to fitness and nutrition. This is easily used in your home life, your work life, your personal views and opinions, anything really that you take part in, because your brain takes part in all of these activities. You will find some of these biases here and there. I know I'm guilty of a lot of these biases too. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I have this awareness and I am trying to be better with that. So I want to help you continue to try to be better with recognizing these and improve and not falling victim to these as well. So getting into it, the first type of bias is confirmation bias. And this one is pretty popular. I think a lot of people have heard of it before. But confirmation bias is your tendency to listen more often to information that confirms your existing beliefs. So you have an opinion about something, you think something is true, you're more likely to use information that supports your opinion than you are to use information against your opinion, right? And this is a way to protect your self-esteem, to help you feel smarter, to help you feel special, to help you feel like you know what you're talking about, that kind of idea. But the thing is, if the thing you believe is wrong and you ignore all of the opinions and evidence and information against what is true because it's just against your opinion, and you're using all of this negative information or untruthful information in some instances to support your opinion just because it's your opinion in the first place, you're gonna again live kind of a life of a lie because you are so worried about yourself as opposed to the truth in a lot of instances. So for one, again, going into training and nutrition as the main example, I see this a lot with incoming clients or people that are struggling with weight loss, where they'll say, I eat really healthy, I make healthy choices, but they'll only focus on those instances where they do make those healthy choices. They'll remember the time they ordered a salad, but they forget about the rest of the day where they had a donut, they had like 3 sodas, they had a dinner date where all they had was dessert. They ignore all of those times. Those don't exist. They don't want to go back to those moments. They want to think of themselves as a healthy person. That's their opinion. Their opinion is, I'm trying to be healthy. I'm trying to do good. And I'm sure you're making an effort, and this isn't to discredit your effort, but you will only remember those times where you do make an effort. And in reality, when you look at the entire week as a whole, that ends up being just a minority of the time instead of a majority of the time. And again, this isn't everybody, but this is a very common thing that happens. So in that instance, being honest with yourself makes a big difference. Creating awareness around what's actually happening makes a big difference, because now you recognize, like, damn, I ate that one salad, but that was only one salad out of 21 meals in the week. If you eat 3 meals a day, that's not going to do anything for me. But because you hold that opinion of yourself of trying to be healthy so dearly, and you're not seeing the results you want, you find something else to blame. But really, it kind of comes back to just knowing that awareness and finding, breaking free of that bias that you set for yourself. Another example is, I spend like 3 hours at the gym, but I'm not seeing any results. This one is something I see very often. I saw it a lot when I was an actual personal trainer at the gym, is people will say this and they will do very minimal work in the gym. They'll spend a lot of time in the gym, but the effort and energy that they put in that time is so minimal. Because for one, if you're actually working hard, no one can spend 3 hours in the gym unless you're using steroids. If you're a natural person, you're trying to lose weight, 3 hours in the gym filled with hard activity is a long time in the gym. So in that situation, you're using the time spent in the gym, the time commitment that you put in, to confirm that you are trying to be healthy, that you're trying to work out. But in reality, you're not doing much in the gym to actually progress you forward. So again, being honest with yourself, creating that awareness, gauging where you're at and seeing what's actually happening so that you can make a better informed opinion and informed decision going forward to help you break free from your rut and break free from this bias to help progress you to your goal. So in both of these instances, now instead of making one decision of eating a salad a week, you'll eat it 7 days a week, let's say. Instead of spending 3 hours in the gym and trying to just do random stuff, be on your phone, socialize, you will spend 1 hour in the gym, set a hard time limit on it, and follow an organized training program so that you are as productive as possible in the gym and maximizing your time. And another example, going to continue rolling off of this, is I don't have the time, to do these things. I don't have the time to eat healthy. I don't have the time to work out. And you think about all the times where you are busy. You remember all the times that you're busy, where you think about you're busy, you think about you're overwhelmed, you think about all the activities on your to-do list that you have to do, but you forget about the times, or you don't acknowledge the times where you're sitting on Netflix for hours, you're sitting on your phone, on your laptop, even though you're spending time on your laptop for hours at a time. I know I'm guilty of this one for sure, where you should be doing work and you spent all this time, quote unquote, doing work, but you spent it on your phone scrolling through whatever social media platform that you're on. There is it's very dangerous to remember those times because they are the minority of the time if you're not careful. And the easiest way to break free of confirmation bias is, for one, for one, in all of these fitness and nutrition instances, is to create awareness around where you're at. Find out what is actually happening. Make a measurable effort to see, is what I'm saying actually true, or is this just what I want to believe to make myself feel better, to make myself feel like I'm doing something. Because we hold our self-esteem very preciously and we want to protect it at all costs. We don't want to seem like the bad guy. And again, this is why I had that disclaimer at the beginning. We want to feel like we're always doing the right thing, but in reality a lot of times we're not. And if we ignore that, we'll never actually get to doing the right thing. So finding that awareness first and foremost is going to be key. When it comes to listening to or acknowledging certain perspectives and viewpoints, so if you have a certain political opinion, let's say, I'm not going to get into these, but if you have a certain political opinion, for instance, do you only read and listen to news that follows your bias? Do you completely ignore and not look at the other side? Because if that's the case, you have an uninformed opinion, because you don't know both sides. You don't know what the other side, maybe the other side actually follows and fits your morals better than what your current side is, but you don't actually know that because you've only spent time looking at what your current belief system is, what your current opinions are. And just exposing yourself to both of these, exposing yourself to the opposite side of the argument, will give you a better, more logical and rational decision to your opinion, and gives it more weight as opposed to it being an emotional decision. So that is pretty much the rundown on confirmation bias. You don't want to have an opinion and let that stick and just follow that opinion forever just because you want to be right. You want to have an actual opinion that is set in logic to some degree, before you start pointing fingers or blaming things on other people. In regards to fitness and nutrition. The next bias, and this is a very powerful one, that happens in an instant and most people don't realize, it's called anchoring bias. And this is where we are overly influenced by the first piece of information we hear. This is basically the first impression idea, that first impressions are powerful, because they are. Our mind, a lot of psychologists don't even know why this happens, but our mind will hold a lot of weight to the first thing that we see. So in negotiations, like pricing negotiations, if you are shopping on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something and you're trying to haggle with somebody, the first price, the first number that is voiced is usually the anchoring point from which all further negotiations go. Your opinion of a person based on their first thing that they do for you is usually what stems off of your opinions of them going forward. In dieting and nutrition, keto has a strong community because of anchoring bias, I think, in my opinion. A lot of it comes from anchoring bias, because when people start keto and they cut out carbs for the first time, in the first 1 to 3 days, they will instantly lose like 5 pounds because they cut out all carbs. And with that, because each gram of carb they eat holds 3 to 4 grams of water, they're losing a lot of water weight instantly, right? So when you lose 5 pounds in 1, 2, 3, 4 days, you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I can't wait to keep doing this. And they can go on months and years doing this and not lose another pound because they're still eating too many calories, they're not moving as much, but their opinion of keto is still that this is awesome, this works, and I gotta keep doing this. They have such a high and strong view and perspective of it because of what those first few moments felt like, that first few moments of accomplishment. And even though it worked for those few days, quote unquote worked, because it was just water weight, they didn't actually lose fat, they fail to break free from the bias of it never working again, of it taking away their energy levels going forward, of it causing them to be more stressed and lose sleep because they're not having enough carbs, because of that first initial response they got from doing keto. So, in a lot of instances, again, the first impression is powerful, but you need to if you're falling victim to this, you want to look at the entire picture as opposed to just one instance, one moment. This is similar to confirmation bias. Instead of looking at just one side of the coin, you want to look at the entire perspective. You want to see like, man, or you want to see and create awareness like, man, have I actually been successful with this? Has this actually been working for me? Or am I stuck to this one idea that I've followed and carried with me this entire time? It is eye-opening to just take that pause and see how many things in your life, even, beyond dieting, see how many things in your life that you've tied to just a first impression that you've stuck with. How many things that you've just gone on believing for so long and you've continued to hold dear to you just because of the time you've been believing this thing. And recognizing that, creating that awareness, and challenging yourself mentally to break down that wall will give you an entirely new perspective on life and how you approach things. So anchoring bias is the next one. Again, the way to break free is to try to create awareness on the entire picture as opposed to focusing on that one moment. Next one we're going to be going through is one of my favorite ones because I'll explain in a little bit why, but it's called the actor-observer bias. And this is where we have the tendency to attribute our actions to external influences and other people's actions to internal ones. And what I mean by this is, let's say you are overweight. Let's say you're overweight, you are a very busy person, you have 3 jobs, you also have hypothyroidism, right? You have a lot of things working against you. So you give yourself the reasoning that I'm overweight because I am a very busy person and I have hypothyroidism, right? And that's I'm not saying that's unreasonable. That's a reasonable thing to say. But when you see someone else that is overweight, severely overweight, probably like you are going to say, man, that person is just so lazy. Why don't they go to the gym? Why don't they do this? They're just such a slouch. You attack them as a person as opposed to their situation. You don't approach it as something that their situation might be exactly the same as yours. They might have 3 jobs and have hypothyroidism. Like, you don't know that about them, but instead of thinking about it that way, you bring them down to bring yourself up a little bit. So another way of looking at this is if someone's giving a presentation at work and they do a terrible job of giving a presentation, then they're just unprepared, they're unprofessional, they're just not in it, they're not a good public speaker. Whereas, let's say you were to give a presentation and it didn't work out because you had to travel for this presentation and you had jet lag and the hotel didn't check you in at the right time, so you got less sleep than you needed. You have all these reasons to why you didn't do well in the meeting. But for this other person that might have experienced the exact same thing as you, they're just unprofessional, they're just unprepared, they're not a good public speaker. And that can hold you back from actually taking ownership for yourself, but also losing empathy for other people as well, because it's easy to the main reason this would happen is, again, to boost your self-esteem and help you feel better about yourself, because you're fighting all these things and you want to make yourself feel like you have a reason to not be where you want to be. But and then also going to other people and calling out their character because your character is so much better kind of idea. But in reality, other people can be going through exactly what you're going through. And this creates such a disconnect when you lack this empathy for other people. You lack this ability to kind of see things from another perspective. It leads to a lot of misunderstandings and leads to unfair and unnecessary finger pointing between people. For instance, another fun example I just thought of, I wish I wrote this earlier. Now I'm glad I thought of it though. Another fun example I just thought of is when people are moving really slow in traffic. A lot of people will be like, oh my God, this guy is so incompetent. Oh my God, I can't believe this guy is driving so slow. The speed limit's 50. Why is he only going 30? There could be a lot of reasons why this person is driving slow. Maybe he has a wedding cake in the trunk that he needs to transport slowly. And if he ruins this wedding cake, he is the worst person in the world to everyone at the wedding, because that is a big priority and a big responsibility they need to hold. So they don't care about the traffic as a whole. They care about getting this wedding cake safely, and that means driving slowly. And in his mind, he's doing everything he can to be a responsible person. In everyone else's minds that's driving around him, this guy is just an a-hole and just taking up everyone's time. He doesn't know how to drive and whatever. Be able to look at other perspectives and not think of other people as doing the wrong and that you're better than everyone else. That's the major takeaway with this. The funny story that I had that I referenced earlier was when I first learned about this in school, my teacher referenced how with sporting events, particularly with, guys and jocks and things like that, they will always attribute their wins to how awesome they are and how good they are at playing games and how well they did like this move on the basketball court. But whenever they lose and whenever the other team wins, it's always the ref's fault. It's always someone else that does it. It's never because they're good and they're able to win and play games and make good plays. It's because the refs suck. This other third party thing just was on their side and couldn't do anything about it. So but yeah, that's the idea with actor observer bias. That one's always funny to me because I always think about it whenever any of the guys like to blame the refs. I'm like, man, but he kind of made a good call. I don't know why you're complaining. Well, you're complaining because it's the other team. But the best way to go about this is to feel more empathy in the other people that you're looking to kind of, judge. You're judging them. So looking at the other people that you're trying to judge and giving them a different story giving them the benefit of the doubt of what would happen if you were in that situation. And for yourself, looking at things from a third party perspective, looking at yourself as the actor and viewing it from an observer's perspective and seeing what would other people say of me? Am I actually acting in a way that fits what I'm saying to myself? Are these excuses or reasons I'm giving to myself, these external factors I'm giving to myself, actually valid? Or are these stories I'm telling to myself to help myself feel better, to help improve my self-esteem? The thing is with all of these biases, and a majority of biases, it is to help protect your self-esteem. It is protecting how you feel about yourself and how you view yourself, which is fine. That's important. You need to feel good about yourself, but I'm not saying you need to, not you need to break yourself down and demean yourself or anything like that, but you need to be honest with yourself at the same time. You need to be lovingly honest with yourself about what's happening, because otherwise you're not growing as a person. Otherwise you're giving yourself excuses to feel good all the time and you're staying in the same spot in reality. So just learning to be honest with yourself and critique yourself in a way that's going to help you as opposed to break you down or tear you down on the inside. The next bias is self-serving bias. So this one is kind of similar, but this is where you have a tendency to give themselves credit for this. I'm going to restart with this one. Self-serving bias is the tendency to give yourself credit for successes, but lay the blame of failures on outside causes. So this kind of goes back to the idea of the ref throwing the game for you when you lose, but when you do good, you're the best person ever because you're the best player on the court. The same kind of idea. When you eat healthy all week, it's because you meal prepped and you're so disciplined and you know how to follow your plan. But when you binge eat on the weekend, it's because someone forced you to eat all that. It's not taking ownership for when things go wrong. And when you don't take ownership, you can't really get better as a person. You can't improve anything that you're doing, because if you didn't do it, if you're not the owner of this action or this intention, then someone else is the cause of it. And you can't control what someone else does, so you stay falling victim to this. When in reality, you have a lot more control over things than you realize, even if it's not as a direct result to things, to the action or consequence. You're still in control of putting yourself in that position. You're still in control of how you respond to that position. You're still in control of anything. You have so much more control than you realize. So this again is like a way to protect your self-esteem. No one ever wants to see themselves as bad, right? No one ever wants to see themselves as undisciplined or unwilling. We don't want to have that opinion of ourselves in our minds. But if you aren't taking ownership when you should be taking ownership, when the fault is yours, and you find yourself always blaming other people, always blaming other stuff for your own shortcomings, you're first of all, no one likes that. No one likes when people do that. When you're never at fault, you got to be at fault sometimes. But second of all, you're again putting this facade on towards yourself, not just towards other people. No one else is going to believe this. Only you're believing this towards yourself, that you are perfect, you are really great at these things, you are awesome at doing X, Y, and Z, but really you have all these flaws that you refuse to acknowledge because you're not blaming your actions, your intentions. You're blaming other things that might have happened that caused this. So for this one, make sure to take responsibility for yourself. You don't want to be someone that's always blaming others for your own faults. You want to be able to take control of what is in your control and be better for it. Don't fall victim to trying to protect your own ego so that you have an excuse to feel good for something that went wrong on your end. And the last thing, this one is a specific type of bias. So this is a branch of optimism bias. I didn't want to use optimism bias as a whole. I pinpointed this one specifically because, me as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as someone that does like lots of random things, I fall victim to this so much. And even when I acknowledge that this is going to be something that happens, I still fall victim to it. It's like it's inevitable in a lot of ways. And this is called planning fallacy or timing fallacy. And this is the phenomenon in which when you estimate how much time is needed to complete something new, you underestimate it. So you overestimate your abilities to make things happen quickly and smoothly. I have one specific example where I remember doing this kind of recently, and it's where I was baking conchas, which is a Mexican sweetbread for those people that don't know. And I'm not Mexican, but I wanted to bake these for a Mexican friend's birthday party. And I found a recipe online. I was ready to do it. The recipe said it's going to take 2 hours to do. And I'm like, okay, 3.5 hours before the party, I'm going to start making these. Okay, so I planned accordingly to account for planning fallacy because I know this was going to happen. And it still took me 4.5 hours to finish the damn conchas. I ended up being late. I didn't want to be late. I don't like being late. But you're going to fall victim to this. You don't want to you don't want to underestimate the time, costs, and risks of these actions for things you've never done before. This is where it's really the strongest. It's when you're doing something new that you've never done before. This is when your estimates are really far off, and it'll always take you longer than you think it's going to take you. And I'm sure if you're thinking back to different times where you thought, oh, this will only take me 20 minutes, it won't be that bad, and it ends up taking you like 2-3 hours, I know the feeling. You don't gotta feel bad. We all experience it. A good rule of thumb for this that I always try to do is 1.5 times to 2 times the length of time that you think it's going to take you is what you should try to aim for. It's still not perfect. You're still probably going to fall short and not, you're still going to fall short. There's still a chance that you can fall short and not hit that time, the extra time that you set for yourself, but at least you're accounting for that possibility and doing your best. I see this a lot with coaching clients a lot of times too. They'll have a specific time frame that they'll want to lose the weight by, or they think they'll lose the weight by, right? Mathematically, they think this is a reasonable amount of time to lose 30 pounds. Let's say they want to lose 30 pounds in 5 months, as an example. That's 5 pounds a month. Wait, 30 pounds, 5 months? No, 6 pounds a month. That's not an unreasonable amount of weight to lose each month. But the thing is, that's expecting everything to go perfectly, which in life, nothing goes perfect. You're going to have setbacks, you're going to have obstacles, you're going to have events you want to go to, you're going to have, emergencies come up that need to put this on pause. I always recommend whatever your time frame is, whatever your estimated time frame is, to add another 2 months for those miscues that you anticipate happen, or not that we anticipate, but that will likely happen. So we plan ahead for them. We're going in prepared. We know that these are going to happen. So instead of looking to do 30 pounds in 5 months, we aim for 7 months. So that way we do it at a comfortable pace. If there's any setbacks, it's okay. We planned for them. We know that this is going to happen. And if there isn't any setbacks, that's cool too, because we got it done ahead of time. So it's always better to take any kind of planning to be overestimated as opposed to underestimated, to account for all of these unexpected things that you're going to face, especially again for anything that you're doing for the first time around. But that is the 5 main cognitive biases. I shouldn't say main. These are the top 5 cognitive biases that I think most people can benefit from understanding, knowing, and self-evaluating and self-reflecting on, to help them become better people, better informed decision makers, and just more thoughtful and empathetic human beings. Thank you guys for listening to this. If you enjoy the podcast, please support our podcast hosts, Top Notch Nutrition and Strong Coffee Company. I love their products. I use them literally daily and would definitely recommend anyone else to use them as well. So if you are interested in using those supplements, using the coffee, head over to their website and use code STUPIDFIT for 15% off any of their items. If you want recommendations on supplements, feel free to reach out to me through Instagram, through my email, whatever you want to do. I'm more than happy to help you out and help you find the best things for your situation. But otherwise, thanks again, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.